Well, thank you very much, Giovanni. It's a fantastic pleasure for me to welcome you all to this conference, because actually its subject is one that's incredibly close to my heart, and that's because my background is not really the typical background of the Vice-Chancellor of an arts university. I spent the first 26 years of my working life in business as a corporate lawyer and a managing director of an automotive design group. And only after I had a sudden Damascene conversion and went to the Courtauld Institute of Art about 10 or 11 years ago did I find myself in the arts world as Vice-Chancellor of this university. So the topic of this conference is really, really, really important to me. The intersection of the arts and business and ways in which we can learn from each other, but most importantly to me, ways in which we can use the innovation that is typical in the arts community to work with colleagues in business and bring new perspectives. I've been absolutely fascinated by the potential of bringing the sensibilities and the psychologies and the approaches of the arts world to business design and business operations. But before I say more about my personal perspective, can I first set the scene by describing our university and maybe answering the obvious question, which is why is a university which only teaches arts, design, fashion and communication feeling that it's got something really important to say about business? Well, I think there are three main reasons for that. There are three main reasons why we have actually a very privileged position when talking about this topic. And the first is that our size and the unusually global mix of our student body means that we have a very, very wide range of cultural perspectives, and that wide range of cultural perspectives is terribly important to the sort of innovation that we need to do. The second is that we teach a very broad range of creative subjects, which provide really unusual opportunities for interdisciplinary exchange, not just within the university, but with the outside world as well. And third, and this is probably the most important, is our experience in working with business. So let me just take these three factors in a little bit more detail to try to draw out why they're so important. First, there's the size and the cultural diversity. We've got over 19,000 students in this university. Perhaps surprisingly for many people, we're one of the largest universities in London. And even more significantly, of those 19,000 students, 9,000 are not from the UK. We're almost an equal balance of UK students and students from outside this country, in fact from over 100 countries. And the interactions between the UK way of thinking and the training of students in the UK and students who've been trained in many cases completely differently elsewhere in the world has been very exciting, and it often has very unpredictable outcomes. And again, those unpredictable outcomes are so important in this innovation. So the second qualification was the range of our disciplines. We teach pretty well everything you can think of that is a creative discipline, from fine art to fashion management, from product design and architecture to performance design and acting, and from graphic design through animation, computer games, journalism, media and publishing. And as the digital world's broken down boundaries between those disciplines, some really exciting interdisciplinary opportunities have arisen that we've learned to work with, perhaps because of the privilege of being in adjacent but similar disciplines. In fact, this very campus was specifically designed to try to create that interdisciplinarity. If you look at the structure of the building, you'll see that it is intended to be and is quite transparent. Staff and students in one area can see people working in others. And the street which we walked down was deliberately designed to try to force interactions between those different disciplines. And it's worked. People have talked in a way that was never possible when they were siloed in different buildings, and some really interesting and exciting research collaborations have resulted. And that third reason for being so interested in this conference for me is the fact that we've worked for some time at the intersection of arts and business. We're proud of the way that we mix the values of art school with courses which provide a really rigorous vocational training for our students and a vocational training for the broad creative industries. In fact, it's this outward-looking focus on delivering our creative education and our interaction with creative and cultural organisations that really underpins our work in this area. And it's given us a really privileged opportunity to explore how art school skills, the traditional skills taught in art schools, can give rise to something new and very, very special for business. So let me perhaps, to help to explain how we got to here we are where we are today, let me just talk a little bit about the journey, particularly of Central St Martin's, which represents about a quarter of our total student body, but the journey from more traditional art school to very, very business interactive university. Essentially, that journey started in 2002 when we set up the Innovation Centre here at Central St Martin's, and Danny Salvadori, who was responsible for setting that up, I'm sure is here somewhere today, but I can't see her, but you will certainly have a chance to talk to Danny later. But we really set up the Innovation Centre based on two core beliefs. The first was a recognition that the way artists and designers are trained itself makes them innovators. They cross boundaries between disciplines, they're networkers, they're very, very restless, you feel that when you walk in the street, and most of all they love change, they're very challenging. And the second core belief for the Innovation Centre was that in order to engage properly with business, we needed to work with people who understood business. And Danny and her very small team in 2002 were really crucial in helping us to shape the way that we interacted with the business community. And with a very generous donation from the London Development Agency in 2005, we created a new space in our old buildings in Southampton Row. And having worked with Nesta in 2008 to look at the processes between artists and innovation, we came up with some really core principles as to how we would launch innovation in the university. And the Innovation Insight Hub, which Giovanni now leads, is really the latest product of that focus on innovation, but in this case, research on innovation, and I'll say something more about that later. But as the Innovation Centre here has developed, we've realised that companies want to work with us because we can often help them to work with the future before it's really happened. The trend forecasting that we do here helps companies to design products and services to influence changing tastes, indeed to change tastes, and to meet emerging demand as it arises. And then, as time went on, we started to provide innovative design services to companies both inside and outside the creative sector. And over the last 10 years or so, the focus on working with business has rippled out across the entire university. And I'll illustrate this with three very short examples. This college has an extraordinary focus on sustainability and the intersection between art, design and science. And Professor Carol Calais and her team from the Textile Futures Research Centre, which in fact crosses the whole university, worked with EDF last year to curate a really major exhibition in Paris, which imagined the future for life sciences and textiles. And that same team subsequently worked with synthetic biologists to explore whether genetic engineering might promote a new kind of manufacturing for textiles, a manufacturing which wasn't as polluting and damaging to our environment as existing manufacturing techniques. It was an innovation that came from working with people who would never normally work with the sort of creative thinking processes that are so important and critical to what we do. And in the area of social design, our Design Against Crime Centre has worked with social and crime scientists not only here but also elsewhere in the world, using open innovation techniques to establish, for instance, how crime can be reduced. And very recently they've worked with the link the Link Banking Network to research how we can design and use cash points in a way that reduces crime. And in Korea, they've worked with the minister, the mayor of Seoul and a Korean university, really to redesign the landscape and cityscape of a very troubled part of Seoul with a view to reducing crime and in fact have changed what was a very troubled part of Seoul into a mecca for sporting enthusiasts by redesigning the environment. And then in fashion design and manufacturing, the Fashion Digital Studio at London College of Fashion has been working with both academic partners and small businesses to find new applications for technology in fashion design and manufacturing. But this isn't just about hands-on projects. These innovation projects have also worked alongside an extension of our curriculum. There are two particular courses that I'd mention here, postgraduate courses. The first is the MA in Innovation Management, which works from the principle that innovation is rarely random. And students on that course develop skills which allow them to manage projects in ways which maximise the chances of successful innovation. And although many of them, probably most of them, start with a design background, they graduate and go off to work in a really wide range of worlds, from science, through technology to social policy. And only 3 years ago, we introduced an MA here in Arts and Science, which brings together artists and scientists to work on projects to spark creativity off each other. And the degree show, the annual degree show of that course here is really becoming very, very remarkable and producing some fantastic communication and artwork from the sparking together of those two disciplines. And the key to both those courses is that they use connective and creative approaches to business and technology. They look at opportunities to manage and promote innovation and new ways of thinking and seeing. And they're profoundly different from the problem-solving approaches of the business schools, although we learn a lot from the way business schools solve problems. So the decision to host today's conference is driven by our particular interdisciplinary experience at the intersection of art, science and business. But it's also reinforced, of course, by a growing social and political understanding of the role of creativity in delivering growth and innovation. And many of you will have seen the recent DCMS data that the creative industries have been growing at 3 times the rate of the economy as a whole over the last 6 years, at 15.6%. You may not have seen the other data, which is that nearly 1 million people work in, nearly 1 million creative people work in sectors other than the creative industries, and that's part of what we feel that we can help to achieve. But despite all that, there's still a major gap in the understanding of interdisciplinarity and open innovation within the creative industries, and that brings me back really to the underlying motive for this conference. Our ambition is to increase our work with friends across the academic, social and business sectors to ensure that new innovations are not restricted to art and science, but involve artists and creatives from within and across the creative world. 2 years ago, we recognised the lack of a UK research body focused primarily on innovation at the intersection of creative practice and broader business. And that's why we created the University of Arts London Innovation Hub. We were very lucky that Giovanni joined us with an interesting background that crossed all of these worlds. His work and the work of the centre is being underpinned by visiting fellows, and we have plans to create a significant PhD community in the hub. But we're just as keen to develop new partnerships, and we hope that as well as reinforcing a flourishing dialogue on this topic today, this evening's event will result in new friendships, new partnerships, and ultimately benefit both arts and business. So I look forward really very much to this conference, and thank you so much for being here and sharing it with us. Thank you.